and a vote of thanks by our media officer in Nampula.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. I'm actually quite pleased to be here and to speak to you. I hope that there's something I will learn from this evening's exchanges. I've chosen to speak about the land and the constitution. Of course, the land being the primary focus of what I'm about to say. So in our discourses on land and discourses on colonialism, we tend to focus on one man that we say shaped the foundations of modern South Africa. Most of you will know that man. His name is Cecil John Rhodes. But what we forget is that 30 years before Cecil John Rhodes arrived at the Cape, there was another man, and perhaps the most important agent of British imperialism, and his name was Sir George Grey. Ever heard of him? Yes. Now, when he landed in the Cape in 1854, he had just arrived from New Zealand, and his mandate in New Zealand had been to civilize the barbarian races of those lands. And when he arrived at the Cape, his mission was the same. And he made this clear when he made his first statement at the Cape Parliament, where he said that his intention was to create the ultimate frontier, which would be partly native and partly Europeans, but where the natives will be won over by our exertions to Christianity, trained by us in agriculture and in simple arts, accustomed to our laws and aware of their advantages, attached to us from a sense of benefits received, respecting us and our strength and generosity. So this is the useful starting point to understand South Africa's past. And what he then set about doing was essentially two things. The first was the introduction of a wide-scale colonial industrial education, setting up schools, distributing funds throughout the Eastern Cape. So today we hear people mention schools like Lovedale, schools like Hilltown, and they do so with a sense of pride. And what they forget is the true colonial foundations of those schools. By the year 1878, most of you who have some historical knowledge of the Eastern Cape will know, by that stage, 2 frontier wars had been fought in addition to the previous 7. And that was the 7th and the 8th Frontier War. And the 8th Frontier War was fought in 1878. But by 1879, the Xhosas had succumbed to the superior army of the British. What then began after 1879 was, in addition to the program of industrial education, was a wide-scale program of labor, the recruitment of labor of the Xhosas. By then, they had lost their land, they had lost their properties, they had lost their men. And what happened to these men? This gets very interesting, because by 1878, there was a government notice, number 372, that was proclaimed. And what it wanted to do was to remove women and children from the Eastern Cape, and they were sent to where? Cape Town. So today, someone says these people are refugees. But what they forget is that actually they were a source of labor deliberately put in the Western Cape subsequent to the last frontier war. And after that, by May 1878, there were more than 8,000 Xhosas taken from the Eastern Cape and planted in the Western Cape to serve as essentially a large pool of labor. There essentially were no wages paid. Those who were taken as prisoners were subsequently converted essentially into unpaid prisoners. And what were they doing? They were building the railway line. You go to Cape Town today, you see the railway line. Those railway lines have their origins in the period between 1879 right up to 1913. They were built on the back of black workers. And where did they come from? A lot of them came from the Eastern Cape. So by 1880, it could be reported in a local newspaper that there were a large number of Africans who were entering the Cape looking for their relatives. Some of them were looking for employment, and some of them were looking for a place to stay. And so the British then introduced an indenture system. And the indenture system was essentially a form of unpaid labor. So when we come to 1913, a lot of people have an attachment to this year, 1913. When we come to 1913, when the Union government introduces the 1913 Land Act, we are already a dispossessed nation. If you go to Zululand, by 1878 in the Anglo-Zulu War, the Zulus were effectively dispossessed of the land, and they were all taken